Hi, I'm Kriza. Today, we'll be talking about theme park pricing in a new century, the Central Florida Market Revisited. Before we're going to discuss the topic, disclaimer, this is from the book Managing Visitor Attractions, 2nd edition, New Directions, published by Butterworth Heinemann and Elsevier Imprint. So the aim of this topic is, first, to discuss the evolution of the Central Florida theme park industry. Second, show how the industry has developed strategies to cope with the maturing of their markets. Third, investigate how the Central Florida theme park industry has confronted both demand shocks and growing competition from elsewhere. And fourth, draw lessons for theme park management in Central Florida and elsewhere. 5 years ago, Braun and Susskind reported that the major Central Florida theme parks achieved the inviolable stability that rewards successful price coordination and avoidance of price warfare. Competition among the Disney parks, Universal Studios, Busch Gardens in Tampa, and Seaworld, Florida was relegated to non-price dimensions of advertising, development, and investment in new parks and attractions, as well as price discrimination and bundling plans such as multi-day, multi-park, and season passes. So what is price discrimination? Price discrimination is a selling strategy that charges customers different prices for the same product based on what the seller thinks they can get the customer to agree to. Nevertheless, pricing had become synonymous with collusive price discipline. Identical one-day admission prices, like in the case of Busch Gardens, and periodic simultaneous price rises. So what is collusive pricing? Collusive pricing is a scenario when several companies agree to set the price of the good or service anonymously. But just when all seemed settled in the world's largest theme park destination, the expansion trend in global tourism and especially theme park travel was deterred by a daunting set of new challenges. A series of terrorist attacks, especially 9/11, depressed demand at air travel destinations in the short term, as well as imposing permanent airport security, time delays, travel inconveniences, and ticket price premiums. The adverse impact on air travel was especially hard on major global tourism destinations that relied heavily on international visitors. Many international travelers canceled travel plans to the US, owing in part to the new regulatory restrictions initiated following the destruction of the World Trade Center. On September 11, 2001, the World Trade Center became the target of the massive terrorist attack that took the lives of nearly 3,000 people. Continued oil price shocks injected further uncertainties to both auto and air travel. This chapter investigates how the Central Florida industry confronted impressive competition from Las Vegas and other convention venues, as well as exogenous demand shocks. Simultaneously, theme park managers needed strategies to cope with a maturing industry in a destination region that may have been in decline. This chapter begins by summarizing and putting into perspective the Central Florida theme park industry as it evolved through the beginning of 2001. Next, the replication of comparison purposes, the price analysis conducted in this book's previous research. The relative incidence of price changes and inter-firm pricing patterns will allow us to assess how successful efforts of the theme park industry have been in price stability and collusive price coordination in this four-firm oligopoly. Then, a demand model is fit against the data to estimate the price, cross, and income elasticities and to identify the shifting relationships among the four parks. So let's discuss the Central Florida theme park management in their development stages. In the formative days of the Central Florida theme park industry, the dominant firm, Walt Disney World, had its way with a competitive fringe of price followers. The competing parks required price discounting to compensate for Disney's financial and name brand advantages. The hypothesis of a dominant firm and an industry without price competition was supported by results of a regression model on prices for Walt Disney World and its primary rivals. The 1980s evidenced a period of steady growth in attendance, with theme park prices increasing faster than inflation. In the 1980s, Walt Disney World's entrance price rose at a compound annual rate of 12.1%. Walt Disney World's pricing strategy provided an umbrella for similar price hikes at rival parks. Seaworld raised prices at an annual average rate of more than 11%, Busch Gardens, hampered by its distance from Walt Disney World, was only able to raise prices at an annual rate of 9.5%. In fact, Walt Disney World succeeded in widening the price margin over its rivals throughout the 1980s, as you can see in the figure. Busch Gardens saw its relative price erode the most, from a 10% price gap in 1983 to 30% in 1990. Seaworld and Cypress Gardens also saw their prices lose ground to Walt Disney World, because this widening price margin occurred even before the external market shocks. The difficulty of matching costly expansions and diversifications by the industry leader must have been the primary cause. Viewed as inferior substitutes for Walt Disney World, competing parks tempered price increases. In addition, corporate cash flow problems necessitated an aggressive price strategy to restore market share. Because of its unique market advantages, Walt Disney World was able to retain industry dominance while continuing to command a premium price. The land holdings Disney acquired in the 1960s spatially insulated Walt Disney World from subsequent entrants. Its rivals did not match a relentless wave of expansion and diversification by Walt Disney World. Disney invested heavily in new attractions, transportation, shops, hotels, restaurants, clubs, and water parks. Multi-day discount pricing helped to keep visitors at Walt Disney World, limiting the residual market available to rivals. During the 1980s, Walt Disney World was able to ignore the individual actions of its rivals. The only way the competitive fringe could attract customers away from Walt Disney World was by charging lower prices. Walt Disney World was free to make small adjustments to prices to maintain optimal profits, consistent with its position as a dominant price leader. From 1982 to 1990, Disney raised prices in 20 of the 32 quarters. Rival parks had equally frequent price changes, but followed Walt Disney World's price increases with a significant lag.
Good day everyone! Hi, I'm Christine and I will be discussing the changes in Central Florida theme park behavior in the early 1990s. So by the early 1990s, the changes in the industry structure and the market conditions began to exert dramatic effects on the pricing behavior. When the followership behavior finally broke down, it was replaced by pricing strategies that are resembling to the parallel behavior once prevalent in the cigarettes, steel, and automobile industries. During 90s, significant transformation altered the Central Florida theme park industry. It was clear that the days of rapid growth in the park attendance were over, and the industry entered a mature stage characterized by slower attendance growth, a higher proportion of return visitors, and greater competition nationally and globally. Furthermore, as the theme park market matures, consolidation of the industry occurred as the largest rival theme parks combined under multinational firm management. So the Walt Disney World faced its three largest rivals. So first is the Busch Gardens, second is the Seaworld, third is the Cypress Gardens. So Busch then mobilized its financial resources, management experience, and the park development expertise to match Disney's $10 billion investment in Central Florida. Meanwhile, a major Disney rival from the Pacific Coast, the Universal Studios, established a substantial presence in Central Florida. So the entry of Universal Studios was the first major entrant since Seaworld 10 years earlier. So the Universal Studio also drew upon the scale economies to diversify their product mix into high-tech rides. When they have encountered technical delays that threatened its reputation for quality, Universal Studios then redoubled its investment. In addition, Universal Studios exploited economies of scope derived from the complementaries in movies and TV production. The entry of Universal Studios had an immediate effect on the local labor markets and theme park prices. Universal attacked two previously unexploited vulnerabilities of Walt Disney World. So first, the Walt Disney World had always enjoyed its strongest appeal among families with younger children. Thus, they have recognized the under 35-year-old crowd that presented a large market niche attracted by high-tech thrill rides and more sophisticated attractions. Secondly, the Walt Disney World's portfolio had expanded into a wide range of themes, including amusements, rides, water parks, and a World's Fair nightclubs and natural settings. Before, the traditional brand proliferation strategy was effective in limiting the market shares of its existing Florida rivals. Walt Disney World was late to recognize the danger from a potential entrant with deep pockets. So the rival entry of Universal forced Walt Disney World for the first time to play a technological catch-up game against a well-heeled rival. As a result, Universal became the only Florida theme park consistently to match Walt Disney's premium pricing strategy, even in the soft market of early 1990s. So Disney's price leader position was clearly being challenged. The broader market factors may have also affected the Central Florida theme park industry. The industry appeared to be entering the mature phase of its product life cycle and a consequent leveling of its customer base. So a maturing tourism industry, like their durable goods counterpart, must obtain an increasing share of business from repeat customers. Attracting repeat business requires potential guests to be convinced that previous visits are inferior substitutes for vacation experiences at the new and improved parks. Throughout 1980s and 1990s, Central Florida boomed as the world leader in terms of its number of visitors and hotel rooms, while Walt Disney World maintained market growth by successfully tapping into an expanding international market. At the same time, Walt Disney later became a major player in cruises and all-inclusive resorts. So the competition has intensified with the Walt Disney World's brand of wholesome and family-style vacation. With the changes to industry structure and the weaker market of 1990s, the pressure on pricing discipline intensified. The pressure was sufficient to elicit more aggressive and independent pricing conduct, thus weakening the leadership-followership behavior observed in the 1980s. So three developments in the pricing patterns provided an evidence that strategic behavior in the Central Florida theme park industry had changed substantially in the 1990s. So the growth rate of park admission prices slowed substantially. The prices converged and the frequency of price changes has fallen. So despite the costly upgrades and expansions, the growth in prices slowed dramatically. From 1990 through 1995, the annual average rate of price escalation was less than 7% at each of the major theme parks. So at Walt Disney World, prices rose only for 3%, steady narrowing of the price gap between Disney and the other parks. Prices were observed nearly converged by 1993. The Universal reached price parity, with Walt Disney World and Seaworld narrow its price margin to within 5% of Walt Disney World. Although Disney responded briefly with an aggressive price cut, it quickly resumed matching Universal's price. It was also noted in 1990 study that the Central Florida theme park industry experienced a statistically significant increase in price stability following the 1990 operating and opening of Universal Studios Florida. So that paper concluded that Walt Disney World and Universal had begun to act as co-market leaders that contemporaneously matched increasingly infrequent price changes. So we speculated that the dominant firm price leadership behavior of 1980 had been replaced, perhaps permanently, by a classic case of collusive oligopoly pricing.
Hi, I'm Trisha. Changing behavior leading into the new century. Upon revisiting the industry later, Brown and Susskind in 2003, the authors confirmed that the coordinate pricing behavior was clearly continuing into the new 21st century. In addition, the newer evidence strongly indicates that the Central Florida theme park industry has moved toward an even greater degree of cooperation and exclusiveness among the major parks. Table 19.1 supports the author's previous research contention that price changes remain at least as rare during succeeding 6 years as they become since the entry of Universal at the beginning of 1990s. Price adjustments, nearly all of them increases, continue to average only about 1 in every 10 months. This written says to alter prices is consistent with recognized interdependence while operating under oligopolistic uncertainties, while dominant price leaders freely respond to changes in cost or demand. Fear of misinterpreted market signals may deter oligopolists from initiating most price changes. Moreover, price coordination became substantially more successful. Nearly 4/5 of the months of March 1995 through February 2001 witnessed no price changes by any of the four major parks. See the table 19.2. This represented a sizable increase over two-thirds of the months experiencing no price changes during the first half of 1990s. By the contrast industry, this harmony or independent behavior manifested itself in price changing by some parts and not others. We also report a dramatic decline in this type of industry pricing behavior. See the table 19.2. Incidence of one or two parks changing prices fell from about one-third to one-eighth of the months. Finally, nearly changes at least two other parks in the same months. As a result, only 8% of the months contain the bulk of price changes. As industries move towards stronger collusive behavior, variable pricing mechanisms often emerge to orchestrate cooperate actions. As already mentioned, one such mechanism is infrequent in price changes. However, market pressures and inflation eventually make price modification necessary. The question is how to alert viral parks of price changing so as not to cause misunderstandings that could trigger a mutually destructive price war. One common device is to reserve price changes for specific times of the year. The auto industry, for example, raises prices each fall when it launches new models. During the period of 1990 to 1995, see the figure 19.1. Price changes occurred at least once in every month except October. But by the second half of 1990s, the Central Florida theme park industry appears to have settled in a handful of months to alter its prices, while price changing were completely absent in 5 of the months, February, July, through September and November. January and March became the favorite months of orchestrating board industry price hacks. Price coordination also burdened and became firmly in reach during the late 1990s. With exemption of the first quarter of 1994, Disney and Universal prices were within 25 cents of each other from June 1993 through February 1995. However, their prices were never identical until they both raised admission prices to $39.22 in March 1995. From that month, the two parks mimic one another prices through 5 subsequent prices hikes. See the figure 19.2. Price increases were duplicate and following 2 months of March to $40.81 in 1996 and $42.14 in 1997. Some of this price regimentation was extended to include the other two theme parks giants in Central Florida. Seaworld have poured enormous amounts of capital and advertising in attempt to attain price parity. They narrowed their price slightly more than $2 below Disney and Universal in September 1994. In May 1995, they shaved the price gap to only about $1.25. This gap was maintained for the next 18 months, but with a submissive overture to the pricing regime created by Disney and Universal. Previous price moves by SeaWorld had all occurred at different times than those of two biggest rivals. Having matched the timing of their price changes, SeaWorld made its final move by replicating the industry leaders in price in December 1997, and again the following April with all three proceeded with matching price hike. It was clear that collective tripoli had been established in Central Florida. February 2001 marked the 13th consecutive month of identical pricing by the three theme parks. Yet, Bush was heavily promoting its Tampa Park in Orlando media and bundling their parks with extended and discounted admission prices. As convergence and coordination of pricing firm among the other three major parks, it was predictable that Busch will not be willing to remain aloof. But Busch Gardens had a larger price gap than SeaWorld to make up. As recently as February 2000, Busch Garden was still changing $5 less than its three main rivals. The following month, a price increase cut this margin to under $3. Bushmore Gardens, which has never timed its price hikes to concede with their other parks, made sure that its next one did, and virtually duplicate the new price of Disney, Universal, and SeaWorld. Although it was not possible to conclude the four-firm exclusive oligopoly was now in force, the Central Florida theme park industry definitely operated in much more than orchestrated environment than in the days when Disney did what pleased and left its competitors scramble for the crumbs. By comparison, Universal and Disney each average a smaller but still respectable 4.6% annual price increase over that same period. It remains to be seen whether these two Busch-owned parks can generate sufficient visitation rates without discounting. The competitive structure determines whether such strategy can succeed. A further constraint is depth of both pockets. The question is whether its pockets are deep enough to maintain the investment in attraction and promotion to feed all pressures to cut prices. The smaller parks still held onto the modest share of theme park market in the Central Florida. The largest of these are Cypress Gardens and the Wet and Wild Water Park. Cypress Garden was about charged three-fourths of Disney admission price, which slipped to under two-thirds by 2001, while the Wet and Wild prices were even lower, average of 60% of Disney's. As a result of this pricing device, Cypress Gardens and Wet and Wild needed to change prices only about once in a year, as infrequently as bigger as rivals. Two-thirds stable pricing thus extended across the industry. Cypress Garden was dissuaded by the short-term market advantage of cutting the prices, for they must be concerned about their smaller rival parks and Disney new Animal Nature theme park, Animal Kingdom. Eventually, Cypress Garden was unable to keep up with the billion-dollar investment budgets of the four majors and shut down operations for a brief period in early 2000. Thus, this intermediate-sized single-theme park had to content themselves in drawing away tourists from those attractions for eddy trips at a lower admission price. This lesson, then, is that the managers in a concentrated market have less power to use pricing, which means that the other strategies must be employed. The appropriate strategy is dedicated by the competitive structure.
Hi, I am Mira. So at this point, we're going to discuss the changes in pricing behavior since 2001 and overall demand analysis. As the new century dawned, there were a lot of changes and shifts were created in this era, especially in the healthy, mature industry in Central Florida. It was rocked by major global economic shocks and powerful outside competition that threatened the leading position of the king of theme park destinations. Also, because of terrorism, restrictive travel regulations and reticence were prompted by traditional theme park visitors. Moreover, this was also the time where the trend in declining convention bookings combined with overbuilding by the convention center hubs of Chicago, Atlanta, and Las Vegas. Speaking of Las Vegas, they emptied their wallets to the tune of billions in new family-friendly themed hotels in attempts to lure away market share from Disney and Universal Florida. Despite continued heavy reinvestment by Universal in an adjacent new park and by Disney, Seaworld and Universal in new high-tech attractions, marketing, and unprecedented discount ticket plans, substantial changes transformed the Central Florida theme park industry back to a two-firm dominated market. The demand analysis of Central Florida theme parks reveal how the theme parks of them fit into the overall national and global market for economic bundles of vacation consumption. So this is table 19.3, or the long linear model looks like. It contains the relevant components of a demand function, such as income and the prices of primary substitutes and complements of confronting each potential theme park visitor in the market. Specifically, combined attendance at Disney's Central Florida theme parks was regressed on the prices charged by the three theme park competitors. Personal disposable incomes per capita and prices of the related goods and services, such as the petrol, airfares, and lodging. All variables in here were deflated by the overall consumer price index, or the CPI, to constant dollar terms and then converted to natural logs so that the fitted regression coefficients would estimate elasticities, or meaning in order to see if the quantity demand of the product changes drastically when its price increases or decreases. Lastly, the model is accounted for sizable but continually shifting tourism seasonality. It was evidently shown in the Central Florida theme park market. The domestic tourism there is higher around holidays, winter snowbird months, and vacation travel periods, while international tourism peaks in the summer and the convention travel season is busiest in the early fall. Therefore, the Disney attendance logged for 1 year, or which is considered as an annually log-dependent variable, was added to the model to control for variation in attendance due solely to seasonal factors present during the corresponding month of adjacent years. The table 19.4 regression results of the logarithmic model was done and based out of the fitted regression equation. The elasticities for the price charged by Disney's competitors allow us to determine the relationship among theme parks in the Central Florida area. First, the price elasticity of 0.38 indicates that Disney park attendance demand is inelastic to its own admission price. That implies that Disney has developed a sufficiently strong market position and brand image to lose only 2% in sales for each price 5% hike. That puts Disney in the enviable position of knowing its revenue are guaranteed to rise each time it elevates its prices for faster than inflation. Moreover, the strong and continued loyalty to their product insulates them from any substantial reservation, cancellation, or visitor substitution over to nearby parks. Seaworld prices did exercise a significant effect on Disney at attendance, and the results indicate that a strong substitution relationship exists. The estimated elasticity of 0.83 translates to mean that a 6% increase above inflation in SeaWorld's admission price will be associated on average with a 5% rise in Disney attendance, other things being equal. One should note that this result does not necessarily suggest that Seaworld is somehow the primary focus of tourists and convention visitors. Instead, it is more reasonable to interpret this relationship to take its most common form in visitors substituting more days at Disney parks, thus raising attendance days if SeaWorld hikes its prices. By contrast, Busch, other Central Florida major theme park, Busch Garden had the only price not significantly related to Disney attendance. Apparently, its weaker brand name and distance from the other three parks, a 90-minute drive west of Orlando and Tampa, combined to make Busch Gardens too weak a substitute to register any significant impact on Disney's gate receipts. Evidently, Busch Gardens would require further substantial investment in creating a more diverse and distinctive portfolio of attractions before the typical visitor views it as anything other than an optional side trip. A strong, unique brand image may also be required. On the other hand, the analysis indicates that Universal is an unusually powerful complement to Disney. This complementary relationship is a consequence of Universal's much greater appeal to teens and Generation Y. Generation Y that includes the young and married, while Disney largely controls the preteen and older demographic bookends of the market. Because the two theme parks' mix of attractions are targeted at different age groups, family groups, which commonly contain both types, will want to visit both Universal as well as Disney parks during their stay. The result is that Universal, unlike SeaWorld, acts as a complementary good which visitors to Central Florida will consume along with Disney parks to obtain a satisfactory theme park experience for all members of the family. The significant and large magnitude of this cross-price elasticity 1.30 means that it would require a 5% cut below inflation in universal admission price to increase Disney attendance by 6.5% on average, other things being equal. Conversely, if Universal raises its park prices substantially faster than inflation, while Disney attendance will suffer on average because potential visitors consider their travel costs based on the combined park admission prices for their entire family. This large complementary relationship provides another reason for Disney and Universal to closely monitor each other's prices and recognize the benefits of tacit pricing coordination. In the 1990s, Disney and Universal attempted to make substantial inroads in the core attraction of each other's parks, rides, and venues. The heavy cost and disappointing record of such direct competition apparently caused a modus vivendi to evolve between the two prize co-leaders. For the information, modus vivendi is an arrangement or agreement allowing conflicting parties to coexist peacefully, either indefinitely or until a final settlement is reached. According to Fondness and Milner 1992, this recognition of mutually superior core competencies has generated the observed complementarity. As a consequence, Universal Studios was the first theme park with deep enough pockets and a strong brand name to challenge Disney's dominance in Florida. Disney was therefore forced to accommodate Universal's market entry in 1990 by allowing the latter to share price leadership. By the mid-1990s, both Universal and Disney were routinely charging identical admission rates and making price changes in unison. The connection between the impact of demographic factors and with the travel demand on theme park demand is also quite informative. Thus, the traditional family focus of Disney theme parks with their stroller-friendly environs and youth-targeted marketing campaign still made Disney the most popular destination for families with young children. This implies to us that major theme parks will thrive as long as there is healthy growth in income of the target market. However, the income elasticity estimate was only 0.63, indicating that Disney theme park visits can no longer be considered a luxury. As real incomes have risen, The appeal to middle-income families for a typical week-long trip to Central Florida theme parks does not rank among luxury travel. As with other tourism meccas of previous eras, such as Atlantic City and Saratoga Springs, perhaps Central Florida as a vacation destination has passed its peak. It is also possible that the age of the theme park may be entering a secular decline in the same way World's fairs and expositions lost favor 3 decades ago. Florida theme parks are both auto and air destinations, so factors that raise travel costs will adversely impact Disney's attendance. The negative and significant coefficients on airfare and petrol prices, like for example the cross elasticities of 0.47 and 0.12 respectively, support this contention. Specifically, a 10% rise in airfares will translate to a nearly 5% attendance decline at Disney parks. However, it would require a fourfold greater increase in petrol prices, over 40% hike to achieve the same attendance declines. The smaller sensitivity of auto visitors to petrol price fluctuations is due to the fact that petrol purchases constitute a small portion of highway vacation travel cost. Vehicle depreciation dominates in the case of sport utilities or vehicles, recreational vehicles, and luxury touring cars, which is a major fixed cost of this travel market. The lesson here is that theme parks must strive for a diverse transportation mix that is not too dependent on any single mode of arrival. Recent large and erratic petrol price fluctuation and the post 9/11 security fees added to airline prices support the position that parks need to attract a balanced portfolio of travel modes. Fortunately for Central Florida theme parks, they remain one of the most balanced air auto destinations in the world. The final component of the model is national lodging prices. The cost of accommodations constitutes a sizable share of family vacation and convention visitor spending. When hotel and motel prices are relatively high, Disney parks have an additional appeal. So apparently, if the cost of lodging is at the lowest price, budget-conscious travelers will tend to look more favorably towards visiting it. Furthermore, travel surveys consistently report that a large portion of Florida visitors stay with friends and relatives rather than paying for their accommodations. The seasonal and permanent residents provide a ready supply of alternative free lodging to Disney's theme park visitors. The model lends strong support to the substitute relationship that national lodging price plays. The relatively large positive cross-price elasticity, the 0.41, implies that a 10% real price increase in average U.S. lodging prices translates into a 4% increase in Disney attendance. Now for the last part of this discussion is the conclusion. Central Florida's experience provides a lesson to other theme park managers. The first lesson is long-established theme parks in mature destinations like Disney do not necessarily have to yield to stagnating or declining attendance and discount pricing. As what can be shown in the figure 19.4, both Disney and Universal has a nearly identical price rival. They were almost the same. They were able to successfully raise their prices consistently faster than inflation despite stronger global competition, the adverse impact of terrorism on travel, and host of other exogenous factors. And how they were able to do that? It is because of their combination of aggressive and proactive management, in a way that they have taken their advantage of their strong global brand image, deep pockets, and commitment to continual investment in cutting-edge attractions that address shifting tastes and demographic trends. Hence, it has allowed them to recover rapidly from the unprecedented economic shocks, counter-terrorism restrictions, and price hikes. The flip side of this lesson is that major theme parks with less advantageous locations and less aggressive reinvestment strategies are easily and more likely to have attendance declines. Just like what happened to Busch Gardens in Tampa. They had eventually forced substantial price cuts, meaning it reduces their price lower than their usual or advertised price. In the years following, Seaworld needed to offer increasingly generous discount ticket plans to continue matching the high admission prices of co-leaders Disney and Universal. Its technique is like if they lower their price, then they could have a massive number of guests because everyone can afford it over the high prices of Disney and Universal has offered. But in the year 2006, despite major investments in new attractions, SeaWorld, like its partner Busch Gardens, yielded to reduced demands that forced it to set prices explicitly below the market leaders. Later that year, SeaWorld delayed matching the timing of the leader's price hike, and the price gap increased farther at the beginning of 2007, though still only half the $5 gap of Busch Gardens. As a result of it, they were not successful of matching and keeping up the competition with the leading theme parks, Disney and Universal. The above conclusion suggests a second lesson for major theme park managers located in long-established destinations. Although it may still be possible that further commitment of capital by Bush management would allow SeaWorld to resume its role among the price leaders, that cannot reassure the outcome, considering that it would also lead to sinking even more their capital in what already may be a saturated market in a global destination. Since their strong competition and had already placed themselves in the spotlight, or shall I say, they had regained the confidence and trust of the customers in the market and were able to get that distinctive recognition from them. Anyhow, Bush management may find greater return on its investment elsewhere that could have passed its historical peak.
The third lesson for the theme park managers is strategic effectiveness of co-optation, that is cooperating shared market interests while maintaining the competitive aggressiveness in product development, promotion, and innovative organizational methods. The return of Central Florida theme park industry to a duopoly price leadership structure may reflect successful division of destination market among complementary rivals. Disney and Universal act as if they have reached a point of mutual recognition that each enjoys unique core competencies and brand allegiance for distinct portions of the traveler demographics. Consequently, the new center was marked by reduced resources dedicated primarily at their largely unproductive attempts to gain market shares at the expense of other. Instead, successful price coordination was followed by a greater coordination and vanquishing outside threats to their common interests. This serves to protect Central Florida's tourism and convention market from Las Vegas, which was a major competitive challenger. It also served a restoring Central Florida as an air and auto destination nationally and in the longer run, globally. In the Central Florida experience is any guide, manager of theme parks can expect a natural product like a cycle occur in their regional market. Because attendance is sensitive to both petrol and airfare price changes, it will be wise for managers to build a strong regional customer base that is not reliant on visitors who travel by any single mode of transport. Managers should be supportive of policies that encourage hotel and convention center development, keeping the price of lodging and bed taxes at competitive level overall.